They gave him 72 hours to choose, his empire or her life. Most men would choose the crown. But Kang-Dae isn't most men. Right now, he's standing in the pouring rain outside the Gangnam Financial Tower, blood dripping from a fresh cut on his left cheek, watching a dozen black SUVs form a semicircle around him. Their headlights cut through the darkness like searchlights in a prison yard. Inside those vehicles are men who've killed for less than what he's about to do. Men who've built careers on the foundation of fear he himself laid down. And every single one of them is here to stop him. The rain hammers against the pavement, washing pink streams toward the storm drains. His white shirt clings to his chest, ruined now, probably a $12,000 loss he'll never think about again. There's a Patek Philippe on his wrist worth more than most Seoul apartments, and it's counting down the seconds he doesn't have. 71 hours and 43 minutes remaining. He doesn't look at it. He doesn't need to. The countdown plays in his head like a bomb timer, relentless and absolute. 3 days ago, Kang-Dae owned this city. Not in the metaphorical sense that ambitious men claim at dinner parties. He actually owned it. 37% of Seoul's commercial real estate flowed through his holding companies. The police commissioner had his private number. For members of the National Assembly owed him favors that could never be repaid. When he walked into the Shilla Hotel, staff members who'd worked there for 20 years would still straighten their posture and hold their breath. His reputation wasn't built on money, though he had oceans of it. It was built on a very simple principle. Kang-Dae kept his promises, and his promises included both protection and annihilation, depending on which side of his favor you stood. But money and fear only tell half his story. The world knows Kang-Dae as a monster who climbed out of Gyeoryong village with nothing but fists and ambition. They know about the warehouse incident in 2009 when he walked in alone to meet the Incheon crew and walked out covered in other men's blood. They know he doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't keep mistresses or show weakness. The financial papers call him the Ice King of Seoul. The criminal underworld has a different name for him, one that doesn't translate well but roughly means the man who plants corpses. What they don't know is why he became this. They don't know about the 14-year-old boy who watched loan sharks beat his father to death in their one-room apartment while his mother screamed. They don't know that young Kang-Dae made a decision that night, covered in his father's blood, that he would never be powerless again. That he would become so terrifying that violence itself would bow before him. And they definitely don't know about her. Her name is Yoon Ji-woo, and she's the only person alive who knows that the monster was once just a scared kid who liked drawing in notebooks and dreamed of becoming an architect. She's the girl from the apartment next door who brought him rice balls wrapped in newspaper when his family couldn't afford dinner. The one who sat with him in the stairwell after his father died and didn't say anything because there was nothing to say. She's the reason he survived those early years. The reason he stayed human enough to remember what he was fighting for when the violence threatened to swallow him completely. 23 years later, Ji-woo teaches elementary school in Mapogu. She drives a 7-year-old Hyundai and lives in a modest apartment she decorated with plants and second-hand furniture. She doesn't wear designer clothes or attend the charity galas where Seoul's elite pretend to care about the poor. She doesn't want anything from Kang-Dae except the version of him that existed before the empire, before the blood, before he became the most feared man in the city. And somehow, impossibly, he's managed to keep her separate from his world. She's his secret, his sanctuary, the one pure thing he hasn't corrupted. Until 3 days ago, when the Lee faction decided to break the 20-year peace treaty. The Lees control Busan and parts of Incheon. Old money. Old grudges. They've been patient, building power in the shadows while Kang-Dae consolidated Seoul. Their current head, Lee Sang-ok, is a third-generation crime lord who wears British suits and went to Oxford. He thinks he's sophisticated, which makes him dangerous in a different way than the street thugs Kang-Dae grew up fighting. Sang-ok doesn't just want territory. He wants humiliation. He wants to prove that Kang-Dae's reputation is just theater, that the Ice King bleeds like everyone else. So he took Jiwoo. Not at gunpoint from her apartment. That would be too crude, too obvious. The Lees are smarter than that. They waited until she was leaving the elementary school after parent-teacher conferences, walking to her car in the parking lot with a stack of student artwork under her arm. A white van. Professionals. She was gone in under 10 seconds, and the only evidence was a child's watercolor painting of a rainbow, lying in a puddle, colors bleeding together. The message came to Kang-Dae 6 hours later. Not a phone call. Not an email. A hand-delivered box left at the front desk of his office building. Inside was Jiwoo's school ID badge and a USB drive. The video on that drive showed her in a concrete room, unharmed but terrified, sitting in a metal chair with her hands zip-tied in front of her. And then Lee Sang-ok's face filled the frame, smiling like he was recording a birthday message. Kang-Dae, my old friend. I have something that belongs to you. Well, not officially, which is interesting, isn't it? The Great Ice King, and nobody even knows she exists. You've kept her hidden like a shameful secret. Or maybe like a weakness. His smile widened. Here are your options. Option 1. You dissolve your holdings. Transfer everything to the neutral parties we've designated. Sign documents renouncing your claim to Seoul. Do this within 72 hours, and the girl goes free. You can run away together, start a new life somewhere. I hear Thailand is nice. Option 2. You refuse, and I send her back to you in pieces over the course of a very long week. And then I take Seoul anyway, because you'll be too broken to stop me. The video ended with a countdown timer. 72 hours. 3 days to choose between everything he'd built and the only person who'd ever mattered. Most men in Kang-Dae's position would calculate. They'd weigh the options. 20 years of work, an empire worth billions, the respect and fear of an entire city. Versus one elementary school teacher who, objectively speaking, was always a liability. Most men would make the rational choice. The cold choice. They'd convince themselves that you can always find another woman, but you only build one empire. Kang-Dae stood in his office for 3 minutes after watching that video. Completely still. His assistant later said it was like watching a statue. Then he picked up his private phone and made a single call to his attorney. Draw up the dissolution papers. All of it. Every company, every holding, every account. You have 60 hours. His attorney, a man who'd been with him for 15 years, tried to argue. Kang-Dae hung up on him. Then he opened his desk drawer and took out the Glock 19 he kept for emergencies. He checked the magazine, chambered a round, and set it on the desk. Beside it, he placed a Korean Army knife, still sharp from his mandatory service years ago. Then he made a second call to Kim Min-jae, his head of security. The Lees took Jiwoo, he said. I'm going to get her back. Don't follow me. Don't help me. If you're loyal, you'll let me walk out of here alone. Min-jae was silent for a long time. Finally, boss, if you do this, if you break the code, the other families will turn on you. You'll have no allies. No protection. I know. They'll kill you. They can try. This isn't strategy. This is suicide. Kang-Dae looked at the photo on his desk, the only personal item in the entire office. It showed 2 kids in a stairwell, 14 years old, sharing a rice ball. Jiwoo was smiling. His younger self looked like he'd forgotten how. Min-jae, I built this empire because I was afraid of being powerless. But I just realized something. All this power, all this fear I've created, it's useless. It couldn't protect the one thing that actually matters. So what's it worth? What's any of it worth if I'm still that scared kid who can't save anyone? He hung up. walked to his private armory, and began preparing for war. That was 72 hours ago. Now he's standing in the rain, surrounded by men who used to fear him, watching that fear turn into predatory calculation. They sense the shift. The Ice King is breaking his own rules, and in this world, that's the same as bleeding in shark-infested water. The driver's door of the center SUV opens. A man in an expensive suit steps out, holding an umbrella. It's Lee Sang-ok. Kang-Dae, he calls out, cheerful as a game show host. I'm impressed. You actually showed up. I half expected you to send lawyers with the paperwork. But here you are, looking very dramatic in the rain. Did you bring the dissolution documents? Kang-Dae doesn't answer. He's counting the men. Visible positions, probable backup, likely weapons. Running scenarios. Calculating odds. Sang-ok laughs. Oh, you're planning something stupid, aren't you? Let me save you the trouble. I have 40 men here. You have a gun, maybe 2. And Jiwoo is 20 kilometers away in a location you'll never find. Even if you kill me right now, which you won't, she dies. The only way she lives is if you sign the papers and walk away. Where is she? Ah, so he speaks. She's safe. Uncomfortable, certainly. Probably very scared. But alive and whole. For now. The clock is ticking, my friend. 69 hours left. Did you bring the documents or not? Kang-Dae reaches into his jacket. Every gun in the semicircle levels at him. He moves slowly, pulling out not a weapon but a folded stack of papers. Legal documents. Corporate dissolution agreements. The dismantling of his entire empire, all requiring just his signature. Sang-ok's smile becomes genuine. Oh, this is beautiful. The Ice King melting. Let me guess, you're going to sign them right here in the rain. Very cinematic, very tragic. Then I'll graciously return your little schoolteacher and you'll ride off into the sunset. Is that the plan? No, Kang-Dae says quietly. Something in his voice makes Sang-ok's smile falter. The plan is simpler, Kang-Dae continues. These papers are a distraction. While you've been watching me, while you've been so confident in your 40 men and your clever scheme, you made one mistake. What mistake? You assumed I came here to negotiate. Kang-Dae drops the papers. They scatter in the wind and rain. I came here to send a message. The message Kang-Dae needs to send isn't meant for Lee Sang-ok. Sang-ok is already a dead man. He just doesn't know it yet. The message is for everyone else. For the families watching from the shadows, the ones making bets on how this ends. For the police who've pretended not to notice his operations for 20 years. For the politicians whose campaigns he funded. And most importantly, for the next ambitious psychopath who might think that taking something precious from Kang-Dae is a viable strategy. The message is simple. There are lines you don't cross. There are prices too high to pay. And some men, when pushed past their breaking point, don't break downward into weakness. They break upward into something far worse than what they were before. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand what Kang-Dae is about to do, you need to understand what he's already done. You need to understand the architecture of his empire and why dismantling it would normally be unthinkable. Kang-Dae didn't start with money. He started with violence, which in retrospect was more honest. At 16, he was running protection schemes in Gyeoryong Village, the last shantytown in wealthy Gangnam. At 18, he'd consolidated 3 rival gangs by the simple expedient of being more brutal than anyone else was willing to be. By 21, he'd moved into legitimate business, using dirty money to buy a failing construction company. That's where his childhood dream of architecture paid unexpected dividends. He actually understood buildings. He knew which properties would appreciate, which neighborhoods were poised for development, where Seoul's growth would flow. By 25, he was a millionaire on paper, though most of that paper wouldn't survive serious scrutiny. By 30, He laundered enough money through legitimate real estate that the criminal wealth and legal wealth had become indistinguishable. He owned office buildings, apartment complexes, shopping centers. He had partnerships with major development firms who never asked uncomfortable questions about his seed capital. And he'd cultivated a reputation that made armed robbery seem safer than crossing him. The turning point came during the 2015 gang wars. 5 major families were tearing Seoul apart, fighting over territory and drug routes. Bodies were appearing in the Han River every week. The police were under enormous pressure to restore order, which meant mass arrests were coming. Everyone knew it. Most of the crime lords went into hiding or fled the country. Kang-Dae did the opposite. He called a meeting. Not a secret midnight gathering in some warehouse. A formal dinner at the Shilla Hotel with engraved invitations and a dress code. He invited the heads of all 5 families, plus their senior lieutenants. The invitation promised safe passage and a proposal that would benefit everyone. They came because curiosity outweighed caution. Also because the invitation implied that refusing would be interpreted as fear, and in that world, showing fear is fatal. Kang-Dae's proposal was elegant, a treaty. Defined territories for each family. Agreed upon rules for disputes. A joint fund to pay off police and politicians, ensuring that law enforcement focused on independent operators rather than treaty signatories. And most importantly, a mutual non-aggression pact with teeth. Anyone who broke the treaty wouldn't just face retaliation from their victim. They'd face collective punishment from all 5 families. The other bosses were skeptical. Treaties had been tried before. They always failed because someone always cheated. Why would this be different? Kang-Dae's answer was chilling in its simplicity. Because I'll enforce it. You've all seen what I'm capable of when someone crosses me. Now imagine that capacity directed by all of us together against any one of us who breaks faith. The treaty works because the cost of breaking it is annihilation. Not from your enemy, from your allies. There was a long silence. Then the Incheon boss, an old-school gangster named Park Dong-chul, laughed. You're proposing we all hold guns to each other's heads and trust that nobody flinches. No, Kang-Dae replied. I'm proposing we all hold guns to each other's heads and know for certain that if anyone flinches, everyone else pulls the trigger. It's not trust. It's game theory. The treaty was signed that night. And for 20 years, it held. Seoul's crime families became quieter, more sophisticated, more profitable. They moved deeper into legitimate business while maintaining their underground operations. The police, satisfied with the decrease in violence, gradually reduced their pressure. Politicians accepted campaign contributions and asked fewer questions. And Kang-Dae, as the treaty's architect and unofficial enforcer, became the most powerful man in the city's shadows. He built on that foundation relentlessly. His construction company became one of Seoul's largest. He acquired a private equity firm, a chain of luxury hotels, stakes in technology startups. He employed thousands of people who had no idea their ultimate boss had started as a teenage enforcer in a shantytown. His legitimate businesses generated so much profit that the illegal operations became almost unnecessary. Almost. He kept them running because in his world, you don't surrender weapons while enemies still exist. And through all of it, through 20 years of accumulating power and wealth, he kept Jiwoo separate. He'd reconnect with her 7 years after leaving Gyeoryong village. Pure chance, he'd been touring a school his company had built, part of a publicity campaign to improve his corporate image, and there she was. Teaching 3rd grade. She recognized him immediately, though he was wearing a $10,000 suit and traveling with bodyguards. Her face lit up with genuine joy, the kind of happiness that had nothing to do with his money or power. She hugged him in front of everyone, completely unself-conscious, and said, Kang-Dae, I thought about you so much. Are you doing okay? Are you happy? Nobody had asked him that in years. Maybe ever. People asked if he was successful, if the deal went through, if he needed anything. But happy? The question caught him completely off guard. He'd wanted to tell her everything. The empire, the violence, the careful balance between legitimate business and criminal enterprise. He wanted to confess that he wasn't the person she remembered, that he'd become something darker. But looking at her smile, at the innocence that had somehow survived in a harsh world, he couldn't. Instead, he lied. He told her he was in real estate development. That he'd done well. That he thought about the old days too. They started meeting for coffee. Then dinner. She never asked about his business in detail, and he never volunteered information. She talked about her students, about the little triumphs and frustrations of teaching. He listened like a man hearing a language from a country he'd left long ago. Her world was small and real and human in a way his hadn't been for decades. He fell in love with her again. Or maybe he'd never stopped. It was hard to tell. But he never told her the truth. Never introduced her to his business associates. Never brought her to the luxury apartment he lived in or the private clubs where he met with other crime bosses. He kept her in a separate compartment of his life, protected by ignorance. She knew he was wealthy and successful. She didn't know he was feared. She didn't know about the treaty or the bodies or the very specific reasons why people went silent when he entered a room. It wasn't sustainable, of course. Deep down, Kang-Dae knew that. You can't build a relationship on secrets that large. But he told himself he'd find a way. Maybe he'd transition fully into legitimate business. Maybe he'd retire, cash out, leave Seoul with her. Maybe the empire could run itself while he finally, after 41 years, tried to be the person he might have become if his father hadn't been beaten to death in front of him. Those were the thoughts of a man who'd forgotten his own first principle. In his world, showing weakness is fatal. Lee Sang-ok hadn't forgotten. The Lees had been part of the treaty from the beginning, controlling Busan and accepting their agreed-upon territory. But Sang-ok was third generation, born into wealth and power rather than earning it. He'd been educated in Europe, learned to see the criminal enterprise as just another business to optimize. And he'd spent 5 years quietly studying the treaty's weakness. The weakness was Kang-Dae himself. The treaty worked because Kang-Dae enforced it. His reputation, his willingness to use overwhelming violence against anyone who broke the rules, kept everyone in line. But what if that reputation was based on outdated information? What if the Ice King had softened? Sang-ok had noticed things. Kang-Dae attended fewer meetings. He turned down several lucrative opportunities that would have required getting his hands dirty. His businesses were becoming almost completely legitimate. And then Sang-ok's intelligence network discovered something interesting. Kang-Dae was seeing someone. A woman. An elementary school teacher with no connection to their world. Sang-ok spent 18 months investigating Jiwoo, learning her routines, confirming that Kang-Dae cared about her. And then he made his move, calculated and cold. Taking Jiwoo wasn't just about getting leverage over Kang-Dae. It was about proving that the treaty's enforcer was compromised. If Kang-Dae chose the woman over his empire, it would shatter his reputation. The other families would see him as weak, sentimental. The treaty would collapse as everyone scrambled to grab what they could. And if Kang-Dae chose the empire over the woman, if he let her die to maintain his power, it would prove he was still the Ice King. But Sang-ok was betting that doing so would break something essential in him. Either way, Sang-ok won. It was a brilliant strategy. Ruthless and effective. It had only one flaw. Sang-ok had fundamentally misunderstood what kind of man Kang-Dae was. Standing in the rain, surrounded by 40 armed men, Kang-Dae can see the exact moment when Sang-ok realizes his mistake. It's in the eyes. That flicker of uncertainty when Kang-Dae drops the dissolution papers and says he's here to send a message. What are you doing? Sang-ok asks. The cheerfulness is gone from his voice. Kang-Dae doesn't answer. He's already moving. His hand goes to his jacket, and this time he's not reaching for papers. The Glock comes out smoothly, a motion he's practiced 10,000 times. He fires 3 shots before anyone else can react. Not at Sang-ok. At the SUV directly behind him. The bullets punch through the rear window and hit the fuel tank. Nothing happens for half a second. Then the night turns orange. The explosion isn't Hollywood-style massive. Real car fires don't work like that unless someone's rigged them with special effects. But it's enough. The SUV's fuel tank ruptures, and burning gasoline spreads across the wet pavement like napalm, creating a wall of fire between Kang-Dae and half of Sang-ok's men. The heat is immediate and intense, pushing everyone back. Men are shouting, some running, the careful formation dissolving into chaos. Sang-ok stumbles backward, his expensive shoes slipping on rain-slicked concrete, and for just a moment, the confidence drains from his face. That moment is all Kang-Dae needs. He's not running away from the fire. He's moving toward it, using the chaos as cover. 2 of Sang-ok's bodyguards recover faster than the others and raise their weapons, but Kang-Dae is already too close. He fires twice more, center mass, textbook shots, and both men drop. He's past them before they hit the ground, closing the distance to Sang-ok with the kind of speed that only comes from years of training and absolute commitment. Sang-ok is scrambling for his own weapon now, but his hands are shaking. He's a third-generation boss who's done most of his killing through proxies and lawyers. He's not used to the hot work, the close-range violence where you can smell the cordite and feel the blood spray. Kang-Dae is. But Kang-Dae doesn't shoot him. Instead, he grabs Sang-ok by the throat and slams him against the side of the burning SUV, close enough to the flames that Sang-ok can feel the heat blistering the side of his face. Where is she? Kang-Dae's voice is perfectly calm, almost gentle, which somehow makes it more terrifying than if he were screaming. Sang-ok tries to answer, but Kang-Dae's grip is cutting off his air. The world around them is chaos, men shouting, more gunfire now as Sang-ok's remaining security tries to get clear shots without hitting their boss. The fire casting dancing shadows that make everything seem unreal. I'm going to loosen my grip, Kang-Dae says. You're going to tell me where Ji-woo is. If you lie, I'll know. If you stole, I'll know. And I'll put your face in those flames and hold it there until you tell me the truth. Do you understand? Sang-ok nods frantically. Kang-Dae loosens his grip just enough. Warehouse, Sang-ok gasps. Mapo District. Near the river. Old textile factory. She's in the basement. Combination lock. 8417. How many guards? 4. Maybe 5. Please, I gave you what you want. Kang-Dae hits him. Not with the gun, just his fist, a short, sharp blow to the solar plexus that folds Sang-ok in half. Then he's moving again, leaving Sang-ok gasping on the ground. The remaining security personnel are recovering from the initial shock, forming up, trying to box him in. There are still at least 30 of them, and one of him. The math is impossible. Kang-Dae doesn't care about math. He runs directly at the nearest cluster of men, firing as he goes. The Glock holds 17 rounds, and he's already used 7. 10 left. He drops 2 more men, then throws himself into a slide across the wet pavement, passing under the wild return fire. His shoulder hits the ground hard, but he's already rolling, coming up behind a parked car. Bullets punch through the car's windows, safety glass raining down on him. This is the point where any sane person would surrender. Or try to negotiate. Or at least acknowledge that they're about to die. Kang-Dae checks his remaining ammunition, 8 rounds, and smiles. It's not a nice smile. It's the smile of a man who's spent 20 years building an empire specifically so he'd have something to burn down if he needed to. He pulls something from his jacket pocket. Not another weapon. A phone. His fingers move across the screen, and he sends a single pre-written message to a number he's never used before. 3 kilometers away, in a parking garage beneath the Gangnam Financial Tower, a man receives that message. His name is Park Jin-ho, and he's been Kang-Dae's personal driver for 12 years. He's also a former ROK Army Special Forces operator with 2 tours in Afghanistan and a very particular set of skills that have nothing to do with driving. Jin-ho reads the message, 72. Execute. He nods to himself, then opens the trunk of Kang-Dae's personal vehicle. Inside are weapons. A lot of weapons. And something else, a laptop connected to a cellular modem, its screen showing a simple interface with a single button labeled Contingency. Jin-ho presses it. Across Seoul, things start happening. At the headquarters of the Incheon family, Park Dong-chul is in his office reviewing shipping manifests when every computer in the building simultaneously displays the same message. The treaty is dissolved. Kang-Dae releases you from all obligations. Protect yourselves. Attached is a data dump, evidence of Lee Sang-ok's kidnapping of Jiwoo, proof that the Lees broke the treaty first, and a detailed dossier of Lee family operations, locations, and vulnerabilities. The same message appears on the screens of the other treaty families. The Gwangju boss. The Taegu organization. Every major player in the criminal underworld receives the same information simultaneously. Kang-Dae isn't just breaking the treaty. He's weaponizing its collapse. But that's not all. The message also goes to 37 journalists, each receiving anonymized evidence of treaty violations, corruption, and criminal operations. To the Seoul Metropolitan Police's Internal Affairs Division. To prosecutors who've been building cases for years but lacked evidence. Kang-Dae is burning down his own empire, but he's making sure the Lees burn faster and hotter. It's the kind of move that should take months of planning. It did. Kang-Dae set this contingency in motion 2 years ago, not because he expected to use it, but because he'd learned long ago that you prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Back at the Gangnam Financial Tower, Sang-ok's men are still trying to kill Kang-Dae, unaware that their boss's entire organization is about to implode. Kang-Dae fires his last 3 rounds, drops the empty Glock, and runs. Not away from them. Toward another SUV, the one on the far left of the formation. He reaches it just as a burst of automatic weapon fire tears up the ground where he was standing a second ago. The SUV's door is locked. Kang-Dae punches through the window. His hand is bleeding now, glass embedded in his knuckles, but adrenaline is a wonderful anesthetic and unlocks it from the inside. He throws himself into the driver's seat just as more bullets slam into the vehicle's armor plating. These aren't ordinary SUVs. They're executive protection vehicles, meant to withstand assassination attempts. Which means they're also meant to protect whoever's inside. The keys are in the ignition. Kang-Dae fires up the engine and slams the vehicle into reverse, smashing into the SUV behind him. Then he shifts to drive and floors it, the heavy vehicle's all-wheel drive system finding traction on the wet pavement. Men dive out of the way. Someone fires a rocket launcher, actually fires a rocket launcher in the middle of Seoul, but Kang-Dae swerves and the rocket hits an empty news kiosk, turning it into shrapnel and flames. He's free of the kill box now, racing down the street with at least 6 SUVs in pursuit. The speedometer climbs, 80 kilometers per hour, 90, 100. Seoul's streets weren't designed for high-speed chases, but Kang-Dae grew up in this city. He knows every alley, every shortcut. He takes a hard right down a narrow street that the pursuing SUVs can barely fit through, their mirrors snapping off against parked cars and building walls. His phone is ringing. He ignores it. It'll be Min-jae, his head of security, calling to tell him that the contingency has activated and the world is ending. Kang-Dae already knows. That was the plan. The Mapo district is 7 kilometers away. The warehouse Sang-ok mentioned is probably a trap, but it's the only lead Kang-Dae has. Which means he's driving straight into an ambush with no backup, no plan, and roughly 67 hours left on the clock. Behind him, the pursuing vehicles are falling back. Not because they're giving up, but because they're receiving new orders. By now, the otherly operations across Seoul are under attack. The treaty's collapse isn't theoretical anymore. It's active warfare, and every family is scrambling to protect their assets and strike at their rivals while the chaos provides cover. Sang-ok's men are being recalled to defend more strategic targets than one suicidal boss who's already throwing his empire away. Kang-Dae doesn't slow down. He crosses the Han River on the Mapo Bridge, the water below reflecting the city lights like a mirror of Seoul's double nature, beautiful surface, dark depths. Jiwoo is somewhere in those depths now in a basement, zip-tied to a chair, probably terrified. The image makes him push the accelerator harder. He's thinking about the last time he saw her, 3 weeks ago. They'd met for dinner at a small restaurant she liked, the kind of place that doesn't take reservations or accept credit cards. She'd been excited because one of her students, a kid from a difficult background, had finally started participating in class. She talked about him for 20 minutes, his progress in math, his artwork, his slow emergence from his shell. And Kang-Dae had sat there thinking, this is what matters. Not empires or treaties or the respect of violent men. This. Her joy over a 9-year-old learning multiplication. He'd almost told her the truth that night. Almost confessed everything and asked if they could leave Seoul together, start over somewhere his reputation couldn't follow. But he'd chickened out. He'd told himself there was more time, that he'd find the right moment, that the truth could wait. Now the truth doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is getting to that warehouse. The Mapo district at night is industrial and empty, the old factories mostly abandoned or converted to hipster art spaces that close before midnight. Kang-Dae finds the textile factory easily, a 3-story brick building with broken windows and faded paint advertising a company that went bankrupt in the 1990s. The front gate is chained, but the chain is new. Fresh scratches on the padlock. Someone's been here recently. He parks the SUV a block away and approaches on foot. His hand is still bleeding from the broken window, and he's pretty sure at least 2 ribs are cracked from when he hit the pavement earlier, but these are minor concerns. He's checking angles, watching for sentries, counting windows and exits. There. Second floor, a flicker of light that's trying to look like random reflection, but is too steady. Someone's up there with night vision or a rifle scope. Maybe both. Kang-Dae circles the building, moving through shadows, until he finds a service entrance. The door is locked but old, the frame rotted from decades of rain. He puts his shoulder into it and the wood splinters. The noise will have alerted whoever's inside, but surprise was never really an option. The interior is dark and smells like mold and rust. Kang-Dae's eyes adjust slowly. He's unarmed now, the Glock is empty and abandoned back at the tower. But he'd prepared for this too. Before leaving his office, he'd stopped at his private armory. Strapped a knife to his ankle. A small pistol, a backup piece, in a shoulder holster. Not much, but enough. He finds the stairs to the basement and pauses. This is the moment. If Sang-ok lied, if Jiwoo isn't here, then Kang-Dae has thrown away everything for nothing. The empire is gone. The treaty is destroyed. Seoul will burn, and he'll have no way to stop it. But if she's here, if there's even a chance, then none of that matters. He starts down the stairs. The basement is concrete and darkness. At the far end, A door with a combination lock, just like Sang-ok said. 8417. Kang-Dae's fingers move across the dial. The lock clicks open. He pushes the door slowly, every nerve screaming that this is a trap, that he's about to die. And there she is. Ji-woo, in a metal chair, hands zip-tied, a gag in her mouth. Her eyes go wide when she sees him. Not relief. Terror. She's shaking her head frantically, trying to warn him, but it's too late. The lights come on, blinding and sudden. And Kang-Dae realizes he's made a terrible mistake. The lights are industrial floods, the kind used on construction sites, harsh and white and revealing. They show Kang-Dae exactly what he's walked into. Not a simple basement, but a kill room. The space is larger than it appeared from the doorway, maybe 20 meters square, and arranged with the precision of a military ambush. 6 men, not the 4 or 5 Sang-ok mentioned. All armed. All positioned at angles that give them overlapping fields of fire with no cover for Kang-Dae between the doorway and where Ji-woo sits. And standing behind her, holding a very large knife very close to her throat, is someone Kang-Dae recognizes. Someone he didn't expect. Kim Min-jae. His own head of security. The betrayal hits harder than any bullet could. Min-jae has been with him for 15 years. They've bled together, built together, trusted each other with secrets that could destroy empires. Kang-Dae had thought. But that's the problem with thought. It's slower than reality, and reality is currently holding a knife to Ji-woo's carotid artery. Boss, Min-jae says, and his voice carries genuine regret. I really hoped you wouldn't come. I told Sang-ok you'd be smart enough to let her go. That you'd understand the game was over and choose to survive. But you're here, which means I was wrong about you. Or maybe I understood you better than I wanted to. Kang-Dae doesn't move. His hand is near the small pistol in his shoulder holster, but 6 men have rifles trained on him, and Min-jae has a knife at Ji-woo's throat. The math is impossible. Again. Why? It's the only word Kang-Dae can manage. The empire burning, he'd accepted. The treaty collapsing, he'd planned for. But this? This cuts deeper than strategy. Min-jae actually looks sad. Because you were going soft, boss. I've watched it happen for 2 years. Ever since you reconnected with her. He gestures with the knife, casual, like they're discussing stock prices. You started turning down jobs. Making decisions based on, what? Love? Nostalgia? You were going to throw it all away eventually. I could see it. So when the Lees approached me, when Sang-ok offered me a position in the New Order after you fell, I had to think about my future. About what happens when the Ice King melts. The contingency. Already shut down. The moment you sent that activation signal, I was notified. I countermanded it. The data dumps? Intercepted. The messages to the other families? Never sent. Your driver, Jin-ho? He's very loyal, I'll give him that. But loyalty doesn't stop bullets. He's dead now, by the way. I'm sorry about that. I actually liked him. The words are designed to break Kang-Dae, and they're working. Everything he'd planned, every failsafe he'd built, it was all dependent on Min-jae being loyal. He'd put the contingency in Min-jae's hands because he trusted him completely. And that trust was the weakness Sang-ok had exploited. So this was all you, Kang-Dae says quietly. You fed them information about Ji-woo. You helped plan the kidnapping. You made sure I'd walk into this. I tried to give you a way out, boss. I really did. If you'd just signed the dissolution papers and walked away, I would have made sure she went free. You could have disappeared together, lived a normal life somewhere. But you had to be dramatic. You had to try the hero play. And now, Min-jae sighs. Now I have to clean up the mess. Ji-woo is crying behind the gag, tears streaming down her face. Her eyes are locked on Kang-Dae's, and in them, he sees something that breaks him more than the betrayal or the hopeless tactical situation. He sees pity. She pities him. Not because he's about to die, but because she's finally seeing the truth about what he is, about the world he's inhabited for 20 years. The violence, the betrayal, the cold calculations, this is his world, and she's horrified by it. Here's what happens now, Min-jae continues. You're going to take out that backup pistol very slowly and set it on the ground. Then you're going to step back. My men are going to secure you. And then, unfortunately, there's going to be a tragic murder-suicide. The great Kang-Dae, driven mad by love and loss, kills his girlfriend and then himself. Very dramatic. Very final. The empire fragments, the Lees and I pick up the pieces, and life goes on. The other families will accept it. They know the treaty was always going to end eventually. This way is actually cleaner than most alternatives. And your contingency, even if it had worked, would just have sped up the inevitable. You were already finished, boss. You just didn't know it yet. Kang-Dae looks at Jiwoo. At the fear in her eyes. At the life he wanted to protect her from, now swallowing her whole. And he makes a decision. Okay, he says. You're right. I'm finished. But before I give you the gun, I need to know, did you ever believe in what we built? The treaty? The idea that we could be more than just animals tearing each other apart. Min-jae considers this. I believed in the prophets, boss. The rest was just aesthetics. That's what I thought. Kang-Dae's hand moves toward the shoulder holster. Every rifle in the room tracks the movement. He goes slow, like Min-jae instructed. His fingers close around the pistol grip. And then he does something nobody expects. He shoots himself. Not fatally. Not even close. He puts the bullet through his own left thigh, high up near the hip. The pain is instantaneous and excruciating, exactly as he knew it would be. He's been shot before, twice, actually, and he remembered that specific quality of agony. But pain is useful. Pain is a tool. And right now, pain is causing every person in this room to freeze in shock for exactly 2 seconds. 2 seconds is all Kang-Dae needs. As he falls, already collapsing from the leg wound, he's twisting. The pistol swings up and fires 3 more times. Not at the men with rifles. At the industrial floodlights. The bulbs explode in sequence. Bang, 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 and the basement plunges into absolute darkness. Chaos erupts. The riflemen are firing blind, sweeping their weapons in arcs, trying to light up the space with muzzle flash. But Kang-Dae is already moving, crawling, really, dragging his useless leg behind him, using the sound of their gunfire to locate positions. His hand finds the ankle knife. He surges up despite the screaming pain and drives it into the nearest gunman's kidney. The man goes down without a sound. More gunfire. A bullet passes so close to Kang-Dae's head that he feels the heat. He grabs the dead man's rifle, a proper weapon now, and fires a burst toward where he remembers the other shooters standing. Someone screams. The darkness is total. No windows in this basement, no ambient light. The only illumination comes from muzzle flashes, which destroy night vision and create strobing snapshots of violence. Kang-Dae sees a man turning toward him and fires. Sees another raising a weapon and throws himself sideways. His wounded leg buckles, and he crashes into what feels like a metal shelf. Something heavy falls, clattering. Lights. Min-jae is shouting. Someone get lights. Kang-Dae is counting bullets, counting men, counting seconds. He's bleeding heavily from the leg wound, stupid, necessary, worth it, and he can feel consciousness trying to slip away. But not yet. Not until she's safe. He hears movement to his left. Fires. The sound of a body hitting concrete. How many down? 3? 4? How many left? A flashlight snaps on. One of the gunmen found his tactical light. The beam sweeps the basement, and Kang-Dae sees bodies on the floor, sees blood, sees Min-jae still behind Jiwoo with that knife. The beam finds Kang-Dae and he fires at the light. The flashlight explodes, but he sees the gunman duck away. Then another light. And another. They're adapting, overlapping their beams so taking out one won't return them to darkness. Kang-Dae is pinned in the open, his leg useless, blood pooling beneath him. The remaining gunmen, 2, maybe 3, are triangulating his position. This is where it ends. He knows it. But he's bought time, created chaos, changed the equation. That has to be enough. Except it's not enough. Because Min-jae still has Jiwoo. Stop. Min-jae's voice cuts through the basement. Everyone stop shooting. The gunfire ceases. The flashlight beams hold steady, all focused on Kang-Dae. He's lying in a spreading pool of his own blood, the rifle partially raised, looking for all the world like a dying animal making its last stand. Boss, Min-jae says, and now all the regret is gone from his voice. Now there's just anger. You shot yourself. You actually shot yourself. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen, and I've seen you do a lot of crazy things. But it didn't work. You're bleeding out, you can't walk, and I still have her. So here's the new deal. Tell your men, the ones you've got positioned outside, because I know you didn't come completely alone, tell them to stand down. Do that, and I'll make her death quick. Refuse, and I'll take my time. Your choice. You've got 10 seconds. Kang-Dae's vision is swimming. Blood loss and shock are fighting for control of his body. He wants to laugh, because Min-jae has made another wrong assumption. There are no men outside. Kang-Dae really did come alone, just like he'd told Min-jae on the phone. But if Min-jae thinks there are reinforcements, that changes the math again. 20 men, Kang-Dae gasps out. Outside. All sides of the building. Ex-military. You're surrounded. Min-jae's expression flickers. Uncertainty. He can't tell if Kang-Dae is bluffing. Prove it. Call them off. Can't. They have orders. If I don't walk out with her in 65 hours, they level this building. You're lying. Am I? Kang-Dae coughs and blood comes up. Real blood, not theatrical. He's in serious trouble. You betrayed me, Min-jae. Did you really think I'd trust you completely? I gave you the contingency because I knew you'd intercept it if you were dirty. It was bait. The real contingency is outside. Men who've never met you. Who have one job, protect her. It's a complete fabrication. But it's a good one, built on what Min-jae knows about Kang-Dae's paranoia and planning. And it's working. Kang-Dae can see the doubt growing. If that's true, Min-jae says slowly, then killing her kills your leverage. No. Killing her means you die. Those men outside? They have specific orders. She dies, they come in shooting. They don't care about captures or questions. They just kill everyone in this building except her. Of course, she's already dead in that scenario, which means I've lost. But you've lost more. You wanted to take my empire. Instead, you get a bullet. Bad trade. Min-jae is thinking. Calculating. The knife is still at Jiwoo's throat, but the pressure has eased slightly. So, what do you want? He finally asks. Trade. Me for her. You keep me alive, you can still use me. Make it look like I'm cooperating with the transition. My men stand down if they see her walk out safe. You get the empire, I get to know she lives. Everyone wins except me, but I'm already dying anyway, so what do I care? It's a terrible deal from Kang-Dae's perspective, which makes it believable. And it gives Min-jae what he wanted in the first place, Kang-Dae's public surrender. How do I know you'll keep your word? You don't. But you know I love her. You've built this entire betrayal on that fact. So you know I'll trade anything, even my life, for hers. That's not strategy, Min-jae. That's just truth. The basement is silent except for Kang-Dae's labored breathing and the drip of blood hitting concrete. Min-jae is staring at him, trying to read the play, trying to see the trap. Finally, he nods. Okay. But if you're lying, if there's no team outside, I'll know in about 5 minutes. And then I'll make her suffer in ways you can't imagine. There's a team. We'll see. Min-jae gestures to one of the remaining gunmen. Cut her loose. Walk her to the front door. If you see any resistance, any sign of a setup, come back here immediately. The gunman nods and moves to Jiwoo. He cuts the zip ties and removes the gag. Jiwoo immediately tries to run to Kang-Dae, but the gunman grabs her. No, Kang-Dae says, his voice barely above a whisper. Go with him. Walk out. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you. Jiwoo. He meets her eyes. I need you to live. That's all that matters. Please. Just go. She's crying openly now. I don't understand any of this. Who are you? What have you done? I'm sorry, is all he can say. I'm so sorry. The gunman drags her toward the stairs. Her eyes never leave Kang-Dae's until the darkness swallows her. And then it's just Kang-Dae and Min-jae and two armed men in a basement that smells like blood and cordite. Well, Min-jae says, let's see if you're a liar or not. They wait. Kang-Dae is counting seconds, trying to stay conscious. His fabricated team obviously doesn't exist, which means in about 5 minutes Min-jae is going to realize the bluff and come back down here to kill him slowly. But 5 minutes is enough time for Jiwoo to get clear of the building. Maybe find help. Maybe survive. Worth it. Completely worth it. Except, the gunman's voice crackles through Min-jae's radio. Sir, you need to see this. What? There are people outside. A lot of people. Min-jae and Kang-Dae lock eyes. And Kang-Dae realizes he wasn't bluffing after all. Min-jae's expression goes from confident to confused to something approaching fear in the space of 3 seconds. He grabs his radio. Define a lot. The gunman's voice is tight with stress. At least 30 people. Maybe more. They've got the building surrounded. Not cops. Not military. I don't know who they are, but they're armed and they're waiting. Impossible, Min-jae says. But he's already moving toward the stairs, keeping his weapon trained on Kang-Dae. He snaps at one of the remaining gunmen. Watch him. He moves, kill him. Then he's gone, boots pounding up the concrete steps. Kang-Dae lies in his own blood and tries to understand what's happening. He didn't arrange backup. He told Min-jae he came alone because it was true. So who the hell is outside? The answer comes about 30 seconds later, filtering down through the building, voices, a lot of them, and then Min-jae shouting something that sounds like a negotiation. Kang-Dae can't make out the words, but the tone is clear. Min-jae is scared. The gunman watching Kang-Dae is nervous too, his rifle swinging between the basement stairs and his bleeding prisoner. What's going on? Who are those people? I don't know, Kang-Dae admits. And then, because he's got nothing to lose and a bullet in his leg, but I'm guessing they're not here to help you. Footsteps on the stairs. Multiple people, moving fast. The gunman spins toward the sound, finger tightening on the trigger. Drop it. The voice is familiar. Impossible, but familiar. Park Dong-chul, the Incheon boss, emerges from the darkness. He's 70 years old, built like a concrete block, and pointing a very large pistol at the gunman's head. Behind him are at least a dozen men, all armed, all looking like they've come from a war zone. The gunman drops his rifle. Dong-chul barely glances at him. His eyes are on Kang-Dae. You look like shit. Feel worse, Kang-Dae manages. What are you doing here? Saving your ungrateful ass. Dong-chul gestures, and 2 of his men move forward. They're carrying medical supplies. Combat medics, Kang-Dae realizes. They begin working on his leg wound with practiced efficiency. Your boy Min-jae blocked your contingency signal, but he wasn't as thorough as he thought. A backup copy got through to my systems about 20 minutes ago. I saw what was happening, the Lees breaking the treaty, your empire burning, and I had a choice. I could join the feeding frenzy and grab what I could, or I could remember that 20 years ago, you created something that made all of us richer and safer than we'd ever been. So you came to help? Out of gratitude. Dong-chul laughs, a sound like grinding gravel. Fuck no. I came because if the Lees get away with this, the treaty is permanently dead. And if the treaty is dead, we're back to the old days. The war years. I'm too old for that shit. So I called the other families, the ones who weren't in on the betrayal, and I explained that we had a choice. We could let the Lees and Min-jae murder you and divide up your territory, or we could enforce the treaty one last time. Remind everyone what happens when you break the rules. The treaty is dead. You killed it when you activated the contingency. But its ghost can still accomplish something useful before it disappears completely. He looks at the medics. How is he? Stable, one of them reports. The wounds through and through missed the femoral artery. He'll live if we stop the bleeding. Why did he shoot himself? Because he's insane, Dong-chul says. But sometimes insanity looks like genius. Sometimes it's just insanity. He turns back to Kang-Dae. I've got Min-jae and what's left of his crew upstairs. The Lees scattered when they realized what was happening. Sang-ok is probably on a plane to Singapore by now. But we've got the traitors. Your call on what happens to them. Kang-Dae's vision is clearing as the medics pump something into his arm. Probably morphine. The pain in his leg recedes to a distant roar. Ji-woo. The woman. Is she safe? My people have her. She's terrified and confused, but unhurt. I had my men explain that she was kidnapped by criminals, and you came to rescue her. Left out the parts about you being one of the criminals, too. Figured that was your conversation to have. Kang-Dae closes his eyes. She's safe. Nothing else matters. The Empire can burn, the treaty can die, Min-jae can live or not. None of it compares to the simple fact that Ji-woo is breathing and free. Kill Min-jae, he says quietly. The others. I don't care. But Min-jae dies. Slowly if possible. Already handled, Dong-chul says. I'll take care of it personally. Consider it a retirement gift. Speaking of which, he pulls out a chair, where did that come from, and sits down heavily. We need to talk about what happens next. You've destroyed your own empire. The corporations, the real estate, all of it is going to collapse over the next 48 hours. The dissolution papers you had drawn up? Min-jae didn't destroy those. They exist. And the moment word gets out that you're alive and willing to sign them, every vulture in Seoul is going to descend. You'll have nothing. I know. So, what's your play? You're 41 years old, bleeding in a basement, and about to be broke. You've also got every law enforcement agency in the country about to take a very close look at your operations once the chaos settles. You're going to jail, Kang-Dae. Even with my help, even with the best lawyers, you're going to jail. Unless what? Dong-chul leans forward. Unless you disappear. Completely. New identity, new country, new life. I can arrange it. I've got contacts, resources. Hell, I owe you that much. You created 20 years of peace and prosperity. That's worth a ticket out. What about Ji-woo? What about her? She doesn't know what you really are. Keep it that way. Take her with you. Tell her you're running from the criminals who kidnapped her. It's not even entirely a lie. Start fresh somewhere. Be the person you might have been if your father hadn't died. It's tempting. So tempting that Kang-Dae actually considers it for several seconds. Just disappear. Leave the empire in ruins and walk away. Take Ji-woo somewhere safe and never tell her the truth about what he built or what he destroyed. But it's also cowardice. And Kang-Dae has done many terrible things in his life, but cowardice has never been one of them. No, he says finally. I'm not running. And I'm not lying to her anymore. She deserves the truth. The truth will destroy any chance you have with her. Probably. But she still deserves it. Dongchul studies him for a long moment. Then he nods. You really are insane. All right. Your funeral. What do you want me to do? Get me to a hospital. A real one, not a black market clinic. I want everything documented. The leg wound, the fight, all of it. Then contact the police. Tell them Kang-Dae was shot while rescuing a kidnapping victim. That part is true. Let them investigate. They'll find the rest eventually, but at least the last thing I did was save someone instead of destroying them. That's suicide. Legal suicide. You'll get 20 years minimum. I know, but it's honest. And I'm tired of lying. To the police, to the world, to her. Especially to her. The medics are finishing their work, stabilizing his leg with a proper splint. Dongchul stands, joints cracking. I think you've lost too much blood. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. Fine. It's your life to throw away. I'll make the calls. He pauses at the stairs. For what it's worth, Kang-Dae, you were a good boss. You kept your promises, you made us all rich, and you built something that actually worked. I'm sorry it ended like this. I'm not, Kang-Dae says. I was building the wrong thing. Took me 20 years to figure that out, but better late than never. Dongchul shakes his head and disappears up the stairs. Kang-Dae lies there as the medics pack up their supplies. The basement is quiet now except for the drip of water from a leak somewhere. He's thinking about Jiwoo, about the conversation they're going to have. About how her face will change when she learns the truth. About how the pity he saw in her eyes earlier will turn to disgust or fear or both. But he'll tell her anyway. Because she deserves someone who's honest, even if that honesty destroys everything between them. The medics lift him onto a stretcher. As they carry him up the stairs, Kang-Dae sees Min-jae's body. Dongchul wasn't kidding about already handled. It's not pretty. Kang-Dae feels nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief. Just a kind of distant acknowledgement that a problem has been solved. Outside, the night is still raining. The street is full of vehicles and armed men from the various treaty families. They've created a perimeter, keeping civilians and police away. But that won't last long. Seoul doesn't tolerate this kind of chaos for extended periods. The authorities will be here soon in force. Dongchul is waiting by an ambulance. A real ambulance, not a fake one. Your girlfriend is in my car. You want to see her before we take you to the hospital? Yes. They wheel the stretcher over. Jiwoo is in the back seat of a black Mercedes, wrapped in someone's jacket, looking small and scared. When she sees Kang-Dae, she tries to get out, but one of Dongchul's men gently restrains her. I'm okay, Kang-Dae tells her. You're safe. That's what matters. What happened? Who were those men? Why did they take me? It's complicated. I'll explain everything, I promise. But right now, I need to go to the hospital. And you need to go home. I want to come with you. No. He says it more harshly than he intended. Softens his voice. No. You need to be away from this. Away from me. Just for a little while. Until I can explain properly. Explain what? Kang-Dae, you're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of this. But you're safe now. That's the important thing. Dongchul's men are getting impatient. The sound of sirens in the distance, police, finally responding to reports of gunfire and explosions. They need to move. I'll call you, Kang-Dae says. Tomorrow. I'll explain everything tomorrow. I promise. She's crying again. I don't understand any of this. I know. Tomorrow. I promise. They load him into the ambulance. The last thing he sees before the doors close is Jiwoo's face, confused and frightened and heartbroken. And Kang-Dae thinks, this is what honesty costs. This is the price of finally telling the truth. The ambulance pulls away, sirens wailing, cutting through the Seoul night. In the back, a paramedic is checking his vitals and muttering about the leg wound. Kang-Dae closes his eyes and does the math. 63 hours left on the original deadline. But the deadline doesn't matter anymore. He saved her. The Empire is gone, the treaty is dead, Min-jae is handled, and Ji-woo is safe. Mission accomplished. So why does it feel like he lost everything? The morphine is pulling him under. As consciousness fades, Kang-Dae's last thought is simple and devastating. She's safe. But I've lost her anyway. Because she's going to know the truth. And the truth is unforgivable. Then darkness takes him, and for a while, there's peace. Kang-Dae wakes up in a hospital room that smells like antiseptic and failure. The ceiling tiles are water-stained. The fluorescent lights hum with that particular frequency that suggests institutional budget constraints. His leg is in a cast, elevated, and there's an 4 in his arm pumping clear fluid that he hopes is just saline and not something more complicated. There are also 2 police officers standing by the door. He's not surprised. Dong-chul had warned him this was coming. What surprises him is that they're not wearing handcuffs yet. They're just waiting. One of them, a younger officer who looks fresh out of the academy, is playing on his phone. The older one, a woman with gray hair and tired eyes, is reading a newspaper. "You're awake," she says without looking up from the paper. "Good. The doctors said you'd probably sleep through the night, but I'm glad you're up. Saves time. Am I under arrest? Should you be?" She lowers the newspaper and studies him. "You were found at the scene of a mass shooting. Multiple bodies, all armed, all with criminal records. You've got a gunshot wound that appears to be self-inflicted, which is interesting. And there's a kidnapping victim who was rescued, which is also interesting. So the question is, are you a victim, a perpetrator, or both?" Kang-Dae considers lying. He's gotten very good at lying over the years. But he made a promise to himself in that basement, and he's going to keep it. "Both," he says. The detective's eyebrows rise. "That's refreshingly honest. Most people in your position would lawyer up immediately. I'll probably need a lawyer eventually. But first, I'd like to answer your questions. All of them. Completely honestly. I have one condition. You're not in a position to negotiate conditions. The woman who was kidnapped. Ji-woo. I need to talk to her first. Before you arrest me, before this becomes official, I need one conversation with her. After that, you can have everything. Full confession. Names, dates, operations. 20 years of criminal activity, all documented, all yours. But first, I need to talk to her." The detective and her partner exchange glances. "That's a hell of an offer," she says. "Why would you confess to everything? What's the angle?" "No angle. I'm tired. I'm done. And I owe her the truth before she hears it from you." She's already given her statement. Says she was kidnapped by unknown men, that you showed up and rescued her, and that she has no idea what's actually going on. She's not a suspect in anything. Good. Keep it that way. She's innocent. Completely innocent. She had no knowledge of my business or my connections. I kept her separate on purpose. Protected your girlfriend from your criminal empire? That's almost romantic. The detective's voice is dry. "All right, Mr. Kong. Against my better judgment, I'll allow one conversation. Supervised, recorded, and if you try anything stupid, the deal is off and you get nothing but a public defender and 20 years in prison. Clear? Clear." She's in the waiting room. Hasn't left since you were brought in. "I'll give you 10 minutes. They bring her in, and Kang-Dae's heart breaks all over again. She looks exhausted, her eyes red from crying, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. When she sees him, her face lights up with relief, and she rushes to his bedside. "Kang-Dae, oh thank God. I was so worried." The doctors wouldn't tell me anything, and the police keep asking questions I don't know how to answer. Ji-woo. He takes her hand. It's warm and small and trembling. I need to tell you something. Several things. And I need you to just listen until I'm finished, because if you interrupt, I might lose my nerve. Okay. She sits down in the chair beside the bed, still holding his hand. You're scaring me. I should scare you. Because the person you think I am doesn't exist. Or he did, maybe, when we were 14, but he died a long time ago. And then he tells her everything. He tells her about watching his father die and the decision he made that night to never be powerless again. He tells her about the violence, the gang consolidation, the gradual accumulation of power and wealth through criminal means. He tells her about the treaty, about becoming the most feared man in Seoul's underworld, about the legitimate businesses built on dirty foundations, about the people he's hurt and the lines he's crossed. He tells her about keeping her separate, about lying for years, about how she was his sanctuary, but also his weakness, about how the Lees used that weakness to try and destroy him, about Min-jae's betrayal and the confrontation in the basement. He leaves nothing out. Every crime, every sin, every dark choice. He watches her face change as he talks, confusion giving way to horror, horror giving way to something worse, understanding. When he finally finishes, the silence in the room is absolute. Even the cops are quiet, absorbing the confession they just heard. Ji-woo pulls her hand away from his. You're a criminal, she says quietly. You've been a criminal this entire time. Yes. The money, the success, all of it was built on violence and illegal operations. Yes. And you never told me. No. I wanted to. So many times. But I was afraid you'd leave. So you lied instead. For years. Yes. She stands up, and Kang-Dae can see her physically distancing herself from him. The gap between the bed and the chair might as well be a canyon. Those men who kidnapped me, she says. That happened because of you. Because of your world, your choices. I could have died because you decided to become a gangster instead of anything else. Yes. And now you're going to prison. Yes. For how long? 20 years, probably. Maybe more. She's crying again, but these tears are different. Not fear or relief. Anger. You risked your life to save me. You threw away your entire empire. But you built that empire by hurting people, didn't you? By doing things that I can't even imagine. So what am I supposed to do with that? Am I supposed to be grateful? Am I supposed to forgive you because you love me enough to destroy yourself? No, Kang-Dae says. You're not supposed to do anything. I'm telling you the truth because you deserve it. I should have told you years ago. I'm sorry I didn't. Sorry. She laughs, but there's no humor in it. You're sorry. That's what you say when you forget someone's birthday or step on their foot. Not when you've been lying about your entire life for years. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you've done? I thought I knew you. I thought we had something real. But it was all based on lies. How am I supposed to trust anything you've ever said to me? You can't, Kang-Dae admits. And you shouldn't. I'm not asking for forgiveness or trust or anything else. I'm just asking that you understand. Everything I told you about how I felt, that was true. The love was real. The rest was lies, but that part was real. She stares at him for a long moment. Then she shakes her head. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. The detective clears her throat. Miss Yoon, you're free to go. We don't need anything else from you. Ji-woo nods. She looks at Kang-Dae one more time, and in her eyes, he sees everything he's afraid to see. Disappointment, betrayal, the death of whatever they might have been. Goodbye, Kang-Dae, she says. Not, I'll see you later. Not, I need time to think. Just goodbye. Final and absolute. She walks out of the room and out of his life, and Kang-Dae watches her go. The detective gives him a moment. Then, well, that was brutal to witness. You ready to give us that full confession now? Yes. They bring in a recording device, a legal pad, and several other officers. Over the next 6 hours, Kang-Dae tells them everything he told Ji-woo and more. Names, dates, bank accounts, corporate structures. He draws organizational charts, explains money laundering schemes, details criminal operations. He implicates himself in everything while being careful to avoid implicating anyone who doesn't deserve it. Ji-woo's name never comes up except as a kidnapping victim. The treaty families who helped him are mentioned only in the context of the rescue, not their own criminal activities. By the time he's finished, the detective looks overwhelmed. This is going to take years to process. You've just given us enough information to bring down a dozen criminal organizations. Good, Kang-Dae says. Burn it all down. I'm done protecting it. Why? Why confess all of this? You could have fought it. Hired expensive lawyers. Made the prosecutors prove every charge. Instead, you're just giving up. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing something different. For 20 years, I chose power and fear and control. It made me rich and respected and completely hollow. Now I'm choosing truth. It's probably too late to matter, but it's the only thing I have left that's worth anything. The detective nods slowly. For what it's worth, Mr. Kong, I think you made the right choice. Doesn't change what's coming. You're going to prison for a long time, but at least you'll go with a clear conscience. Maybe, Kang-Dae says. We'll see. They arrest him formally the next day. The news breaks 48 hours later. Seoul crime boss confesses to decades of criminal activity. The media has a field day. His legitimate businesses collapse as investors flee and partners terminate contracts. The empire he spent 20 years building is dismantled in less than a week. The trial is quick. With his full confession, there's no need for extensive proceedings. The judge sentences him to 23 years in prison with possibility of parole after 15. Kang-Dae listens to the sentence without emotion. 23 years. He'll be 64 when he gets out, assuming he survives that long. Prison is not kind to former crime bosses. He's transferred to a maximum security facility outside Seoul. His cell is small and gray and exactly what he deserves. No more luxury apartments or private offices or the illusion that money can protect you from consequences. For the first few months, he's in protective custody, too many people with grudges against him, too high a risk of assassination. He spends 23 hours a day in his cell, reading books and thinking about everything he destroyed. He writes letters to Ji-woo. Long letters, trying to explain himself, trying to articulate feelings he barely understands. He never sends them. What's the point? She made her feelings clear. Goodbye means goodbye. Then, 6 months into his sentence, he receives a visitor. It's not who he expects. Not a lawyer or a former associate or one of the crime bosses looking to gloat. It's Park Dong-chul, the Incheon boss, looking older and more tired than when Kang-Dae last saw him. They sit across from each other in the visitor's room, separated by bulletproof glass, speaking through phones that make everything sound distant and tinny. You look terrible, Dong-chul says by way of greeting. Prison isn't a spa. True. Dong-chul is quiet for a moment. I came to tell you something. The families, the ones who helped rescue you, we've formed a new treaty. Based on the old one, but tighter. More accountability. We learned from what happened with Min-jae. That's good. We want to name it after you. The Kang-Dae Accord. A reminder that betrayal has consequences and that sometimes the hardest thing to do is the right thing. Kang-Dae almost laughs. You want to name a criminal treaty after the guy who's in prison for being a criminal? That's twisted. That's exactly why it works. You built something good from something bad, then destroyed it all when you realized the cost was too high. There's a lesson in that. The lesson is don't become a gangster in the first place. Too late for most of us. But we can at least be better gangsters. Less collateral damage. More honor. That's what your treaty gave us, and that's what we're trying to preserve. Do whatever you want. I'm not in a position to stop you. Dongchul leans forward. I also came to tell you about Jiwoo. Kang-Dae's chest tightens. Is she okay? She's fine. Still teaching. Still living in Mapogu. But I thought you should know, she asks about you sometimes. What? My people keep tabs on her. Protective surveillance, nothing creepy. Just making sure the Lees don't try anything stupid. And she asks the surveillance team about you. How you're doing in prison. If you're safe. If you need anything. Kang-Dae doesn't know what to do with this information. She said goodbye. She did. And she meant it. But that doesn't mean she stopped caring. Human beings are complicated, Kang-Dae. You can hate someone for lying to you and still love them for saving your life. Both things can be true at the same time. What am I supposed to do with that? Nothing. You're in prison for the next 23 years. But I thought you should know, the story isn't over. Maybe when you get out, if you get out, there might be something to come back to. Or maybe not. But possibility exists. That's more than most people in your position can say. The visit ends shortly after. Dongchul leaves, and Kang-Dae returns to his cell. He thinks about Jiwoo asking about him, about the possibility that goodbye wasn't as final as he thought. It's a small thing. A tiny spark of hope in an otherwise dark landscape. And Kang-Dae, who built an empire on fear and destroyed it for love, decides that maybe, just maybe, that spark is worth holding on to. Because here's the truth that took him 41 years to learn. Power is empty, fear is hollow, and empires built on violence always collapse. But love? Love is the only thing that survives the fire. Not always. Not easily. But sometimes. And sometimes is enough. He's in prison. He's lost everything. His empire is ashes, his reputation is destroyed, and the woman he loves said goodbye. But he told the truth. He saved her life. And somewhere in Seoul, she's still asking about him. In 72 hours, the most feared boss in Seoul risked everything for her. The empire burned. The treaty died. Everything he built turned to dust. And sitting in a prison cell, Kang-Dae realizes something that makes him smile for the first time in months. He'd do it all again. Every choice, every sacrifice, every burning bridge. Because she's alive. Because she's safe. Because he finally chose the right thing, even though it cost him everything. The Ice King melted. The empire fell. And in its place, something infinitely more valuable emerged. The truth. And maybe, just maybe, in 15 years when he walks out of here, that truth will be enough to build something new. Something real. Something that doesn't require lies or violence or fear. Something like redemption. But that's a story for another time. Right now, Kang-Dae has 23 years to serve, books to read, and letters to write that he'll probably never send. And somewhere in Mapogu, an elementary school teacher is asking questions about a man who once chose her life over his empire. The story could end here. It probably should. But stories, like people, rarely end when they're supposed to. They continue, messy and imperfect and full of possibility. Kang-Dae closes his eyes and imagines a future where he walks out of prison a different man. Where he finds Jiwoo and tries to explain, one more time, what she meant to him. Where she might, just might, be willing to listen. It's probably a fantasy. But then again, so is building an empire from nothing. So is creating 20 years of peace through violence. So is walking into certain death and surviving. If he's learned anything from this disaster, it's that impossible things happen every day. You just have to be willing to pay the price. And Kang-Dae has already paid everything. Now all that's left is to wait. and hope, and believe that sometimes, against all odds, the story doesn't end with goodbye. Sometimes it ends with hello again. 15 years from now. Maybe. In 72 hours, Seoul was never the same. Comment King if you'd risk it all for love, and subscribe to see what happens when the Ice King walks out of prison in part 2.